Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into an absolute masterclass on transforming your garden soil. Seriously, if you want to unlock the true potential of your harvest this season, you are in exactly the right place. We're going to get our hands dirty, figuratively speaking, of course.
But right off the bat, I want you to consider this staggering number, 70%. That is the amount of vital, plant-boosting nitrogen that can literally just vanish into thin air within a few hours if you apply manure improperly. Just imagine spending all that time and money trying to enrich your soil, only to have the vast majority of those hard-earned nutrients just evaporate before they even reach your plant's roots. Well, today, we're going to make absolutely sure that never happens to you.
Okay, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll start with the basics and benefits, then move into how to choose the right manure for your specific needs. After that, we'll hit the golden rules of timing, cover prep and application methods, reveal a hidden herbicide danger you absolutely need to know about, and wrap it all up with sustainability. Let's jump right in.
Starting with Section 1, the basics and benefits. So we need to make a fundamental shift in how we think about this stuff. Unlike synthetic fertilizers that just pump salts directly into the plant's roots, manure is organic matter. It's basically a giant buffet for soil microorganisms. You are feeding the soil biology, and then that biology feeds your plants. And because it's this whole biological process, manure acts as this amazing slow-release energy source. It steadily dispenses nutrients over 3 to 6 months. This is absolutely perfect for long-fruiting plants like tomatoes, because they need a really steady diet even as their stems start drying out late in the season.
And that beautifully illustrates the difference between a quick synthetic fix and true long-term soil health. By upping the humus content, you make the soil way more aerated and you dramatically increase its ability to hold on to water, which is a total lifesaver if you live in a dry area. Plus, the residual benefits are just incredible. A good organic application can last up to 3 to 4 years in sandy soils and an amazing 5 to 6 years in clay. I mean, that is a real investment in your garden's future.
Moving on to Section 2. Let's talk about choosing the right manure. So, all manure is not created equal. We can actually match the animal source to exactly what our plants need. Cow or dairy manure, that's your all-arounder, fantastic for general soil structure and your everyday veggies. But if you're growing heavy feeders like tomatoes, peppers, or melons, you're going to want poultry litter. It packs a massive 3.4% nitrogen punch. On the flip side, what if you're growing root crops, carrots or radishes? Look into pig manure. It's got an exceptionally high phosphorus concentration of 2.5%, which is exactly what roots crave. And horse manure gives off tremendous heat as it breaks down, making it the historic go-to for loading up hotbeds in early spring.
But listen, we need to debunk a major myth right here, right now. The whole idea that fresh is best? Yeah, scratch that. It is definitely not. Take that high nitrogen poultry manure we just talked about. It is incredibly potent, but when it's fresh, it contains highly concentrated uric acid. If you just slap that directly under your growing plants, it will literally burn and kill the roots. No joke. It has to be managed carefully, which leads us perfectly into our next point.
Section 3. The golden rules of timing.
Getting this season right is absolutely crucial. Fall is pretty much the gold standard here, especially if you're dealing with heavier soils. You really want to deep-till well-rotted manure right into the ground so it has the whole winter to fully decompose. That locks those nutrients in tightly. Now, if you absolutely have to apply in the spring, it must be fully composted, never, ever fresh. And you should only really work it into the top 10 centimeters of lighter, sandy soils. Plus, it has to be done at least 2 to 3 weeks before you even think about sowing seeds or putting seedlings in the ground.
And hey, timing isn't just about what's best for the plants, it's also about environmental regulations. Based on good agricultural practices and nitrate directives, there are strict winter bans on applying any nitrogen-heavy fertilizers. Depending on if you're up north or down south, you generally can't apply these between early November and late February. Why? Well, during those months, the ground is usually frozen, covered in snow, or just completely devoid of active roots. So if you put manure down, those rich nutrients don't go into the soil. They just wash straight off into the groundwater and cause some pretty severe pollution.
All right, Section 4, let's get into the nitty-gritty of preparation and application.
To actually use this stuff safely, you have to follow a composting protocol. Solid manure needs to be stored and aged for a minimum of 6 months. And while it's sitting there, the internal temperature of that pile has got to get over 55 degrees Celsius. That intense heat isn't optional, it's mandatory because it destroys harmful pathogens and literally cooks any weed seeds hiding inside. Then, when autumn rolls around and you're ready to apply, try to get it incorporated into the ground before soil temperatures drop below 10 degrees Celsius. You want it in there while those microorganisms are still awake and working.
Okay, but what if it's the middle of summer and your garden just needs a quick boost? You can actually use a traditional method to make a fast-acting liquid feed. Some folks call it a sherbet. You basically take well-rotted bird or cow manure and dilute it heavily with water. We're talking a strict 1:10 ratio here. Once it ferments, all those complex organic compounds break down into simple, water-soluble ions. You can pour this liquid gold directly onto the soil around actively fruiting veggies like tomatoes and cucumbers. Do that 2 or 3 times, spaced a couple of weeks apart, and watch them take off.
Moving on to Section 5, the hidden herbicide danger.
Now pay close attention because this part catches so many gardeners off guard. Aminopyralids. They're a class of highly persistent herbicides that farmers use to kill broadleaf weeds in pastures. And here's the terrifying part for us. Grazing livestock can eat grass treated with these chemicals. The chemicals pass entirely unharmed through the animal's digestive tract, and they even survive that 55-degree high-heat composting process we just talked about. If you bring that contaminated manure into your garden, it's going to distort, stunt, or just completely wipe out sensitive crops like your beans and tomatoes.
So how do we troubleshoot this? How do we protect our gardens? First, you got to talk to your farm source. Ask them point blank what they spray on their pastures. If you're producing your own compost from bought hay or manure, meticulously check any pesticide labels for grazing or composting restrictions. Keep records of exactly where your stuff is coming from. And here's a massive pro tip. Before you spread a whole new pile of manure across your entire garden, do a quick biotest. Just plant a couple of highly sensitive bean or pea seeds in a small pot with the new compost. If they sprout up looking all twisted or deformed, do not use that manure.
Finally, Section 6. Let's look at sustainability and our environment.
Remember that 70% nitrogen loss I mentioned at the very beginning? Just look at how steep this initial drop is for surface-applied dairy slurry. It's wild. 35 to 95% of the total ammonia loss happens in just the first 2 to 5 hours. Because the slurry is liquid and totally loaded with urease enzymes, the absolute second it hits the open air, the nitrogen rapidly volatilizes. It just vanishes. This proves exactly why liquid manure has to be incorporated or tilled directly into the soil the moment you apply it.
Now, compare that to poultry litter. Because poultry litter is a lot drier, that initial rate of loss is a bit slower. You can see it's a gentler slope at first. But don't let that fool you. The total loss is still incredibly high, and it just keeps steadily climbing over the first 7 to 10 days. Honestly, whether it's liquid dairy or dry poultry, leaving it sitting out on the surface of your soil is quite literally throwing nutrients and your money right into the wind.
To stop this kind of loss, and more importantly, to protect our local ecosystems from harmful runoff that causes those nasty algae blooms in our waterways, we really have to follow sustainable application rules. Incorporate it into the soil as fast as humanly possible. Never ever apply it on frozen, snow-covered, or flooded ground. And always maintain a strict 5 to 10 meter buffer zone away from any rivers, streams, or lakes.
All right, let's bring it all home with our core takeaways. First things first, test your soil so you aren't just guessing. Over-fertilizing is a rookie mistake. As a rule of thumb, you shouldn't apply more than 17 kilograms of active nitrogen per acre in a single year. Second, use what we've learned to match the specific manure type to the crop you're actually growing. Third, patience is a virtue, folks. Never use raw, uncomposted manure on actively growing plants. Now, I gotta throw in a quick disclaimer here. While all this information is firmly rooted in expert agricultural research, your individual results might vary, and you should always consider your specific local soil conditions and environmental regulations. Definitely check the resources link below to learn more about your local guidelines.
Well, you are now officially armed with the knowledge to build incredibly healthy, highly productive soil while still protecting the environment. So I'll leave you with this thought. Knowing the hard science of timing and specific manure types, how are you going to transform your soil strategy this season? Thanks for hanging out with us, and happy gardening!